Hello there, good afternoon and welcome to The Nation. I'm Tsunami in the studios at Banama, and today we have a very pertinent medical and health topic to share with you all out there. Now, of course, obesity and concurrently diabetes has become a nationwide concern, with Malaysia being billed as Southeast Asia's most obese nation. Our diabetes rates stand at roughly about 17.5% of the population, which is not only alarming but an increasing number from previous years. So what can we really do about this, and what is the general perspective of the Malaysian population, the man on the street? So let's hear a couple of perspectives before we get to the meat and the bones, which is of course our special in-house studio guest for the day. Let's check out the Vox Pop first.
So my mom is a diabetic patient, and what she do every day is she control her food and doing exercise. And I'm still young. I think I didn't control my food, so I think I won't be affect anything for now, because I'm doing exercise also. I'm playing futsal, and for coming generation they have to control food because this disease is increased every day.
Saya bila doktor explain dekat saya, mula-mula kemungkinan saya akan dioperasi dan dipotong kaki. So saya terkejut bila doktor explain. Alhamdulillah semua okey. So start daripada tu saya dah kurangkan air minum yang manis.
It's hard to prevent like with taking diabetes, cause like if you are rushing, then we like take fast food, right? It can't prevent. Yeah. We don't know what they put inside. Yeah. So yeah, but we will try to take a balanced diet. Yeah, follow the pyramid. Yeah, take more vegetables. Yeah, try to prevent diabetes lah.
Setahun saya cecap 6 bulan sekali saya buat check up. Alhamdulillah buat sementara sekarang ni masih tak ada lagi yang menampakkan saya punya diabetes tu kandungan gula melebihi daripada yang sepatutnya lah. Sebab kita makanan sekarang ni banyak yang makanan fast food, boleh kurangkan makan malam lah. Yang itu yang nasihat yang diterima daripada doktor kepada saya lah.
Right, so there you go. So you've had a little bit of a perspective from what the general Malaysian man or woman on the street thinks, and with half of Malaysia's population also obese, definitely, and in the clinical manner, we now have with us today Dr. Rajen Manicka, who is a food ingredient entrepreneur, who will also be sharing with us a little bit about diabetes and what kind of a different approach we can take to tackle this problem that really doesn't seem to be going away at all. Hello, Dr. Rajen. How are you today?
Kamina. I'm very good, thank you.
All right, it's a pleasure. So now, first off, I have to ask you, what is your reaction to having watched a little bit of the perspectives shared by Malaysians out there when asked cold, what do you think about diabetes?
Well, I do a lot of public talks, and I know that's the reaction. People think that, okay, number one, I'm young, so I won't become diabetic. You know, it doesn't have to hit me yet. Number two, if I eat a balanced diet, whatever that means, I'm fine. If I do a bit of exercise, I'm fine, right? And sprinkler people will say, okay, I'm going to cut my sugary drinks and all that, but nobody's really able to very succinctly say this is the problem and this is the solution, right? So really what you saw in that 2-minute video was confusion.
And it's really Malaysia in a nutshell when it comes to this public health pandemic.
Yes, which is hitting us all the time.
Exactly,
right.
It really is. Now, what is the root of the cause? Yourself as a medical researcher, as a doctor, definitely it's all about getting down to the baseline, the root of the cause. And how much does it have to do with our infamous as well as much beloved Malaysian diet? We love our roti canai, we love our nasi lemak, we love everything that is starchy, sweet, but also tastes delicious.
Yes.
And how much has this to do with the fact that we are currently the Southeast Asian country with the highest obesity as well as the highest diabetes rates?
Right. Okay, again, you know, you hit the nail on the head because you said starchy and sweety. The typical Malaysian diet is very rich in carbohydrates.
That's right.
Right. So, you know, people think of carbohydrates as maybe fruits and vegetables, but also all grains are carbohydrates, right? So the average Malaysian diet, you know, it's rice, It's roti canai, it's bread, it's pao, it's noodles, spaghetti, pizza, crackers, biscuits, instant noodles. It's a lot of carbohydrates. Now, the word carbohydrate basically means a string of sugar molecules. So
Right.
when you consume a carbohydrate, ultimately in your body, it becomes sugar, right? Many people are surprised when I say this, but this is my PhD. But a bowl of white rice
Right.
is the chemical equivalent of 10 teaspoons of sugar.
Wow. 10
Right.
teaspoons of sugar.
Right. Number one, in 15 minutes of eating that, you get 10 teaspoons of sugar in your system. But nobody stops at one bowl of rice, and therein lies the problem. So when I was doing my doctorate, I looked at the average Malaysian carbohydrate intake and equated that to the amount of sugar we take, right? And on the average, a Malaysian will take 2 cups of sugar every day, 50 teaspoons of sugar every single day.
That is insane when you quantify it like
Yes.
that, doctor.
It's 50 teaspoons sugar, and people don't believe it. They say, no, cannot be. I said, okay, let's sit down and let's do a food diary for the last 24 hours. What was breakfast? Oh, 2 slices of bread. Okay, great. One bread slice is 3 teaspoons of sugar. That's 6.
Right.
What drink went with that? Oh, I had coffee or I had tea. Did you put milk, condensed milk? Yes, that's 1 teaspoon of sugar. Did you add sugar to it? Yes, 1 more teaspoon. So you have at breakfast 8 teaspoons of sugar.
And what is the average teaspoons of sugar that any average individual should be having per day as a maximum level?
Well, I would say none. I would
Ideally
say
none. Okay. And we are of course talking about added sugars, right,
That's right.
doctor?
You see,
Not natural.
we tend to go to the restaurant or to the mama shop and say,
That's right.
teh tarik kurang manis. Now, what does that kurang manis mean? Nobody really quantifies that, right? So to the guy who's making it, kurang manis means less, but less of what? So he may have been putting in 5, so you get 4. Or worse still is he listens to you, it's kurang manis, but he still does what he wants to do.
That's right. And how often do we send back the drink, for
That's
example?
right. How often is it? This is too sweet, I won't take it, right? So at least the culture where you say tak mau gula, and then you add your own teaspoon of sugar gives you some control.
That's right. Some leverage,
Some
right?
leverage, right? And then there's a chance for you to say it's not sweet enough, I can add some of it, and you will never make it too sweet. Okay, because we tend to add condensed milk, which is sugary, plus it's a double blow. And then you sit down and have a roti canai. That typically would be 3 to 5 teaspoons of sugar, right? And not always 1, sometimes 2.
Exactly. So I can see where it comes from, that it adds up to roughly 50 teaspoons of sugar
Every single day.
Every single day. Now,
right?
moving along from there, Dr. Rajan, you have coined a very interesting term known as the 4S tsunami.
Yes.
Tell us what this means, especially in relation to the average Malaysian diet.
Right. So, if you look at, when I was doing my doctorate, I had this term, the 4S tsunami, which is starch, which is the biggest threat we have in our lives daily, sugar, which we know but are not really told how bad and how much it is, or is there a limit to it.
Right.
Then of course there's salt, and then there is saturated fats.
That's right.
So it's a very potent mix, which the food industry loves because it's addictive, it's
it tastes
tasty,
good. Yes.
it's abundant, it's got a low price point, so your profits are good. But the average man in the street, or the average, today, children, they get a lot more sugar than they should.
Very true.
Be it cakes and sweets, or condensed milk, which comes in the form of drinks that they take, or carbonated drinks, which, again, a typical can of a sweet drink, right? Anything is there is between 8 to 10 teaspoons of sugar. So, and you don't feel it because it's liquid.
Exactly.
Right?
You're drinking your sugar.
Yeah, you're drinking your sugar. So we have this. So the truth of the matter is, this sugar cannot be stored. It's so toxic, it can't be stored. Nowhere in your body can sugar be stored. So you really have to work it out to burn it off, and none of us are doing that today.
Very
right?
true.
We sleep, we wake up, we sit on toilet bowl, we sit and have breakfast, and then we sit in the car and go to work, and then we sit at work, and then we sit back at work, come back home, we sit and watch TV, we sit and eat, and we go back to sleep. So we're not burning it out.
Very true.
So if you're not burning it out, what can the body do? Because it can't store it for sure. So the first thing the body does is it will throw it out as urine.
That's right.
And that's why the first sign of diabetes is thirst. You need more water to flush it out, right? Not very efficient, because eventually your kidneys will wear out and you might end up holding a lot of water, which will lead to high blood pressure, which is linked to obesity, linked to diabetes, right?
Yes.
So the other option the body has is to convert this into anything that will not dissolve in water, a fat. So you got cholesterol, you got triglycerides, and of course you got stored body fat, which is obesity.
So would it be right to say that obesity and together with it diabetes is actually sort of a gateway disease to so many others?
Yes, it is. It's a starting point.
Right.
Right.
Now moving along from there, so diabetes being what it is, now what about the influence and the impact of an increasingly westernized diet on the Malaysian diet, whereby we also integrate pasta, a lot of bread, a lot of baked goods, a lot of confectionery, which are not actually native to Asian diets, but now we see it on every table,
That's right.
at almost every meal as well, in addition to what we already consume carbohydrate-wise.
Right. I think, Asians have a particular sweet tooth. So if you add a bread in Europe, the same one here will have more sugar in it.
I see.
Right.
Okay.
And Asians tend to like sweetish bread. So you have bread with sugar on it, and you got bread with chocolate in it, or cocoa in it, right? So this is adding on to the problem, really. And I think the other thing that we seldom talk about or seldom discuss is instant noodles,
Right.
Which is abundant, cheap. For a lot of people, that's almost a staple, because it's very quick and you can even make it in a cup. But that becomes sugar right away. That's easily 20 teaspoons of sugar in there.
Exactly. Now moving from the westernized diet to the Asian diet to consumers being more health conscious, whose responsibility is it to ensure that when consumers are looking for healthy food options on the grocery store aisles, that the food is actually available for them?
Right.
And that it's not so expensive that we go for the cheaper option, which is what a lot of time happens to.
Right. I mean, that's a very complicated question in the sense that ultimately we have to be responsible for our own health.
Also true.
I really believe what you put in your mouth is entirely up to you. Save for the days that you are born when you're being breastfed or bottle fed, or the days you're about to die being tube fed. Every time else, what you put in your mouth is entirely up to you.
That's the cold hard truth. Yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
but how much of it is free will? How much of it is driven by advertising? How much is driven by the availability of foods? If I'm out there and I see all I see, right? It becomes a big issue. So I think obviously governments have a role to play. Public education, even a program like this, has a role to play
Exactly.
in at least making people stop and think, wait a minute, what's this, obviously it's being important to be part of the school curriculum in schools, or at least maybe even at university level, where people need to be told it's not happening the way we thought it would happen.
That's
there are
right.
kids now more obese, there are adults now more sick, there are now with almost a fact of life that a lot of children will be obese.
Exactly.
And number of 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 having diabetes in Malaysia is a scary number.
It is. Now on that note, time for a quick commercial break, and when we're back we'll still be right here with Dr. Rajen, speaking a lot more in detail about diabetes. Do stay tuned.
Views of industry captains. Analyze and examine trends and projections. Gain market insights from subject matter experts. Biz Talk every Friday 8:30 p.m. only on BNC.
Brings you the latest in current affairs, lifestyle and entertainment, as well as one-on-one discussions with fascinating personalities. Only on Onama News Channel. legitimate, and packed with information. First on site with reports from across the country and around the world. Be in the know through Bernama News Bulletins. Only on Bernama News Channel.
Hello there, welcome back to The Nation. Thanks for still keeping it locked on. So we've been speaking about diabetes and taking a different approach to it from what we've already been told, everything that we've already heard, and we're still with Dr. Rajen Manicka speaking about the topic. So, Doctor, as you were saying, now there is a responsibility on every individual to make conscious food decisions. Now, what about food manufacturers? What sort of responsibility do they have, of course, in addition to their own companies and making a profit, also towards public health? And when will we actually start seeing this responsibility come in actively within the Malaysian food industry?
Right. Tamina, that's a very good question. I think, you know, the reality is in the business world, you are focusing on a bottom line.
That's right.
It's a profit incentive, a profit motive. So obviously you like foods that are going to be of the 4S type. They're going to be sweet, they're going to be starchy because they're cheap, they're very addictive, they're very abundant. You want consumers to come back for more. So if you just leave it to industry, nothing can happen.
Very
right?
true.
There has to be government intervention, in some form or way, or consumer pressure, right? Like what we're seeing in Europe and North America, right? Or Australia for the matter. There's a lot of consumer pressure to drive some of that industry to think in terms of consumers' health, right? So at least in the United States, you got the largest companies now making declarations. We want to reduce our starch by so much. We want to reduce our sugar by so much, in so many years, or we want to reduce the amount of sodium in our food by so much. That I think is the way forward, because in all honesty, if we were to look today, we are the product of what we put in our mouths, and a lot of what we put in our mouth is driven by an industry that has an incentive to drive that kind of products into our mouths because they want to make money.
So it's quite a catch-22 situation, isn't it?
That's it.
I mean, we're sort of the consumers and we're being pulled by market forces, we're being pulled by what we do know education-wise as the government on the other side.
Yes.
So what does the consumer do at the end of the day?
Right.
And how do we as consumers not only eat well, eat right, but also enjoy our foods?
Correct.
Is there a way to reach some sort of a balance, especially in Malaysia where everyone's scared of diabetes, but ultimately a lot of people end up developing diabetes and they just learn to live with it?
I think the message, ultimately should be some form of moderation and a lot of control. I think you can eat any food you want if you know how much and when to stop, right? So I tell people, look, you can always be rice less. Take that one bowl or half bowl. You don't need 3 bowls, right? And you can always be in meals and days rice less, right? So one day you could just have fish and vegetables, grilled fish and vegetables.
That's right.
Or have a steak where there's no rice in it. So I think that as long as we have the basic know-how or the knowledge, then what we can do is drive towards that and see that we have a fair amount of moderation in what we do. And I think moderation is always a good thing in life.
Exactly.
Knowing when to start, but more importantly, knowing when to stop.
Now there are already various health campaigns as well as activation slogans and everything that have gone out, definitely from the Ministry of Health, from educational bodies, even from schools as well, with regards to diabetes and controlling and perhaps being aware of the signs and signals. Now what do you think, Dr. Rajen, has led to the abject failure of these campaigns? Because apparently they're all not working, since we are unable to control the rate at which Malaysians are actually being diagnosed with diabetes as well as obesity.
Right. I think that it's to do with the consumer's general apathy, the typical tidak apa attitude. It doesn't matter. So as long as people don't take a serious position for themselves, for their own health. It doesn't matter what the governments do, it doesn't matter what the industry does, right? So we have to plant that ownership in people. It's about your body, it's about your health. At the end of the day, you are the one who's going to suffer. Whether you're going to be blind or having diabetes or having dialysis or have a kidney amputated, you are ultimately the sufferer.
Exactly.
So you've got to make some minimal modification today to work towards that. We saw that in the video earlier. The guy said, my mother is diabetic, so I'm going to get diabetes. So at least that awareness is already happening. And I think that, you know, schools and teachers have a role to play, because it's probably the best time to hit people, you know. And if you go to most school canteens, there's too much sugar there. And I think, you know, a simple thing like cutting the sugar down there will have a big impact down the line. You know, there's too many sweet drinks and sweet foods and canned drinks out there for these kids to access. So I know that in the United States they've got this K-12 program where they forbid the certain foods to be in the school canteen, and they insist now that kids have fruits, for example.
Right, natural sugars.
Natural sugars.
Okay, there you go. Now, what would you say are some of the more common myths about diabetes as well as obesity that you have come across, which are still something, the type of misinformation which really should not be out there anymore, considering how much information we have access to?
I think one misinformation that we all have is fat is bad.
Right.
And therefore people avoid all the fat they can. But fat is fundamental in diet. Fat is very important actually in a part of a balanced diet, right? And fat is very important if you want to prevent carbohydrates from digesting so fast. Yes,
that's right.
That's why throughout our evolution, all our foods are basically carbohydrates with fat, bread and butter, you know, chapati and ghee, your chicken rice cooked in the chicken's fat, nasi lemak, the lemak component, the fat, right?
That's right.
Satay with a peanut sauce and the ketupat, so the peanut sauce is a fat. But because we become very health conscious, we don't want the fat, so we say chapati with no ghee.
That's right.
I won't take the bread and butter, I'll just take bread and jam. So we're doing ourselves a lot of disservice.
Because that's actually misinformation that has been spread in favor of the sugar industry.
Correct.
Now, moving from that, just to end it off with, Dr. Rajen, what would you say are some ways in which consumers can make healthier choices, especially we as Malaysians who tend to eat out a lot? So we're not cooking too much at home these days. That's a reality of urban life. So how can we make sure we're not constantly consuming a lot of sugar just because we eat outside?
Right. So again, going back to sugarless on sugarless. Try to be sugarless all the time, and sugarless whenever you can. Try to be rice less most of the time and riceless whenever you can, right? And you know, today there are people who are health conscious. There are a lot of supplements you can take as well.
That's right.
And you know, there are fat burners, carb burners, or carb blockers, right? And recently now there is new innovation which is coming from spinach, but all of us cannot digest spinach.
Right.
You know, we're not cows. We don't have the cellulose enzyme. So this is spinach, and this technology, which is not available in pharmacies, basically, if you take it, then it helps you control your cravings. And therefore you're able to control your food intake. Now, there have been 9 clinical trials, and a trial on animals where we found when the animals got this, they all lost weight. I mean, animals don't make a conscious decision to stop eating or to go exercise, and yet they all lost weight.
Right.
So these are some of the things consumers can do, apart from moderation, maybe 1 or 2 supplements, you know. And obviously, as long as you're eating your, what I call God-made carbohydrates, fruits and vegetables, you won't go wrong.
There you go. So that's been fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Rajen.
You're most welcome to me.
Exactly. So there you have it. A little bit more facts as well as what you can be doing as an average Malaysian, as an average person who loves food, but also does not want to deprive yourself, and at the same time being health conscious. As Dr. Rajen said, go towards being a little bit carb less. and exactly what he mentioned. So thanks so much for joining us here on The Nation. We hope you've learned a little bit more about how you can help to accommodate within your diet Malaysian foods, as well as what to cut out so that you are not just another statistic on the obesity as well as the diabetic rates going through the country right now. Thanks for joining us. I'm Tamina Kausji with Dr. Rajan signing off.